Shenanigans.
All right, Rob B. Canada's Supreme Court made some major rulings for Indigenous peoples. So, Rob B, is this truth, lie, or shenanigans?
This is some truth that undoes some former shenanigans. So on Friday, April 23rd, Canada's highest court reversed a federal government 65-year-old claim that the Sinixt people, an Indigenous nation originally from British Columbia's interior, no longer existed. For those of you who don't know, British Columbia is the westernmost province of Canada. Neo, could I get you to pull up the map, please?
Absolutely, sir.
And I hate that I do this to you guys. It's just, here's another history lesson.
No. Education. We need
So-
it in America. We need it here.
We need it everywhere. So in the red highlighted area, you can see that the traditional territory extends mostly into southern British Columbia, but also northern Washington state. So archaeological evidence suggests that the Sinixt were there approximately 3500 BCE, and this is based on some of the pit houses that they have found. To put that into context, 3500 BC, Romans built Rome in 753 BC, and the Greeks started building the Parthenon in 447 BCE. So the Sinixt people were there for a long time. So there's also historical evidence that they suffered severe depopulation through one or two smallpox epidemics. The epidemic of 1781 was likely the single largest outbreak with a mortality rate of 80%. So not really great times for these people. In 1820, the Hudson Bay Company established Fort Colville, which was close to major Sinixt fishing and trading sites, and that's near Kettle Falls, Washington. In 1872, so the people were basically displaced from northern BC and then down to the Fort Colville kind of area. So these were people who were semi-sedentary. So they basically, during the nice months, would set up shop in BC, do their hunting and fishing, and then during the winter months, they'd come back to northern Washington and they would stay in their pit houses where they could stay a little bit warmer. So
border meant
in
nothing
18...
to them.
But there was no border, man.
Right.
These are invisible lines that we created, right? In 1872, Ulysses S. Grant passed a presidential order that forced 12 tribes, including the Sinixt, to forcibly amalgamate into the Colville Confederacy, which is the gray little section that you're seeing in northern Washington on the map right now. So this was an Indian reserve that was set up, and now you have peoples who spent their traditional lands, 80% of them are in BC, and now they've just been thrown into this tiny little sliver in Washington. In 1956, the federal government of Canada asserted that all Sinixt people in Canada had moved to the Colville Reservation and were deemed to be extinct in Canada. In 2010, the Sinixt leaders sent one of their members to hunt an elk in BC. So Richard Dishotel crossed the border into BC and shot an elk in their traditional lands. Immediately after he felled the animal, he reported himself to the authorities, and he was brought into custody because, he crossed the border, he's doing some legal hunting, he doesn't have any claim to this whatsoever. And that was the event that threw this into the courts, that became the catalyst for it. So now, as a result, we're seeing that the Canadian government is recognizing that the Sinixt people in Washington actually have claim to these territorial lands, that they have a territorial right to use these lands. So what this new law, or what this is saying, is that persons who are not Canadian citizens and who reside in Canada can exercise an Aboriginal right. That is incredible because, as we know, that's an invisible line that we have between US and Canada. And this decision now recognizes US-based Aboriginal groups to have a claim to use lands across both of our countries. So without unpacking it any more than that, I would like to get your opinions on how this court... Oh yeah, there's a lot more, but In your opinion, how does this court decision impact or affect US-Canada relations with First Nations people? And should the Sinixt people and other Indigenous peoples reserve the right to travel between US and Canada borders unimpeded in order to access traditional lands?
Well,
Neil, let,
yeah, I'll start.
let's go to you.
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, I think it's a great thing that Canada was able to make this ruling, because, like you said, like we said, there were no borders. These are all, man-made. America and Canada decided there were borders, and all of a sudden, Indigenous people have to follow those borders. And can't go to their ancestral lands, which is completely unfair. I'm hoping that. Now, do we know, is the U.S. allowing similarly the migration back and forth without impediment? Do we know?
I know that this has been challenged previously in Iroquois territory, just as far as people traveling between Michigan and Ontario, that there have been challenges historically, but how it's being handled as a whole from both nations, I really don't know. This was a huge education for me taking on this story and just getting the story. It was, I learned a lot.
Well, there's no question they have rights to their lands, and they need to be able to retain their rights to their lands. I'm gonna keep it really simple to that. Lizzie, what do you think?
I think one that Robbie, this is another issue that I'm happy that you brought to the table that I need to do more research and get more education about. But I think it's obvious what the implications are here or what is driving this. And it's something that, I mean, I think even if you think about what's happening in the Dakotas, if you think about what's happening in Montana or in the northern parts of the United States, it's something very similar where the government has stepped in and has denied Indigenous people their rights, denied them their land,
Mm-hmm.
denied them their opportunity to say, hey, this is who we are, and we are going to make laws to protect that. It's something very similar, but it's not talked about a lot here. And it's one of those things where I often think, okay, we're talking about or we're fighting about, social injustice or whatever. And Native Americans, Indigenous people living here on, U.S. American soil have every right to be pissed because no one is, advocating or supporting them. Um, as it relates to this particular issue, I had no idea that this group of people were at one point considered extinct. I mean,
Mhm.
just let that for the viewing audience, just let that, think about the word extinct. You no longer exist. You have been eradicated. You have been faded out. We no longer have to deal with you. And now we have a government that's saying, okay, whew, that's not really the case. These people are here, these people are real, and this is something that we need to address. And so in 2021, this blows my mind. This blows my mind in 2021. But I understand because, again, I live in America and we're dealing with a lot of, social injustice issues here. Completely understand how this came to be. And when I say I understand, I'm not saying I understand in agreement. I understand because, was that a cat that just walked across the street? What was academically, I understand. It's like, okay, yeah, here we go again, trying to subjugate a group of people for our own gain, our own benefit. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting. So my question, Robbie, is then what are the next steps? After this
Well,
declaration from this court, what are the next steps?
the US and Canada are going to have to figure out the travel arrangements, how these people are going to be able to travel between US and Canada because, well, these are people who don't recognize that border. So by recognizing that they are people and these are their traditional lands, it gives them the ability to reconnect with other Sinixt people that they have been separated from for the last 150 years. I know that when the ruling came down, the gentleman that I referred to, Richard de Sotel, the hunter that went and shot the elk, he was reported to have done his happy dance for an hour. And I mean, you can't blame him, because I came across an interesting little saying from a group of children when I was doing my research on this. And the kid was saying, the more you learn, the more you understand. The best way to help is for all of us to learn about it. Knowing helps us move towards reconciliation. And I couldn't agree with that more, because to learn that in your to learn in your history of your nation that a people was displaced to another nation because of the way things were done, and then the other nation's government passes a law that says, okay, so you guys who came from Canada are now part of this group with the 11 others, and we're just going to put you here. But wait a minute, this is much further south than our traditional lands. We want to go back that way. And just to see it reversed, like, it's a couple of hundred years in the making, and to know that these people were occupying these lands for, with the archaeological evidence, like some 5,000 years or 5,000 years ago, that's amazing. So to see them repatriated with their land is a wonderful story. I think it goes a long way towards showing that the Canadian government is serious about truth and reconciliation, but we have a lot to fix ourselves.
Absolutely.
I'm just
Joe?
responding to some of the.
Oh,
We're
okay.
still arguing on the website about Jose's topic, so I'm still,
Fair. I'm glad it was a good one. To be honest, when you brought this article forward, Rob, it made me very, very happy, just because I had to do a project on residential schooling for Indigenous people. And although I read one book and some articles, I learned so much. And what the Indigenous people have gone through is absolutely shameful. So to know that, we are making headway in Canada, it makes me proud to be Canadian. It really, really does. Now, in regards to the borders, if Trump was still in power, no, I don't think this would be shut down. But I remain hopeful with Biden. And I hope that he does right by the Indigenous people. And like you said, to think that these people were known to be extinct, no, you don't exist anymore. What? I couldn't imagine that. And now they have their own authentic identity. That's just celebrations. It gives me shivers, and it gives me hope for humanity in Canada.
What's happening?
Oh, Mia, we can't hear you, my friend.
I'm sorry, my dogs were making a bunch of noise. So I had to
Who let the dogs out?
You.
but it looks like I was looking for comments on Robbie's topic online, and there's a few, but most of the comments are still on Jose's. Jose, good topic, I guess.
Thank you.
All right, so the tribes, John Ram says the tribes in South Dakota were even denied the opportunity to decide if their own people would be quarantined during the pandemic. Thankfully, they pushed back and told Governor Nome to kick rocks. Kevin Thaxton, he says, as for the Sinixt, there should be permission for nomadic folks to travel between borders to practice their traditions. So, yeah.
Yep.
And let's see. I think there's still, there's a bunch of comments about.
I'm definitely gonna have to do my research.
Yeah,
on this.
same here. All right.